Warning, this video will contain some heavy matters, such as talking about mental disorders as well as being a dick to those who have them. This is your only chance to back out. Okay, we done? Good. You know, I think it's weird that Yandev news keeps being pushed in front of me, and to be honest, I have reservations about making this video, since I keep saying, hey, I'm done with it, but then something new keeps happening. I think it's a testament to the tire fire that is Yandere Simulator.
Oh no! They're stealing the tire fire!
But since there are some things that I do need to address concerning my previous video on this subject, I figure I might as well kill a couple of birds with one stone, but I'll save that for the end part of the video. What needs to be addressed is Yandev himself. Shock of all shocks, I know. Now, I'm well aware that this is my third video on the guy this year, and trust me, I am sick of the topic as much as you guys are, but this is kind of important, especially considering that a lot of his supporters are now leaving him because of this current situation. And no, I'm not talking about his creepy VTuber status.
Also, don't you think those boobs are a bit too small?
Kill me! Kill me! I want to die!
It's due to the fact that Yandev banned a person with DID and lied to his moderators, and this comes from a Reddit post that I'm gonna go through and summarize. But if you want the full story, I suggest you guys go check out the original Reddit post for more details, and I'll be linking in the description. A lot of the screenshots that I'll be showing in this are from a user named Sears who used to be a moderator in Yandev's server. Credit goes to them, and I send them nothing but the best wishes if they face any harassment because of this. For those who don't know, DID is Dissociative Identity Disorder, originally known as Multiple Personality Disorder. I'm using that since it's a common occurrence in media in our own world. Although, and to be frank, there has been a history of how media tends to portray disorder and not the most faithful adaptations. Disorder isn't anything like having Yugi and Yami in the same body. Or Diavolo from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And while I don't think it's a bad thing to have a disorder in media, what is bad is what comes from it, because what sparked this whole incident is when there are mods being kicked because of it. To make it clear, DID is a mental disorder characterized by the maintenance of at least two distinct and relatively enduring personality states. The disorder is accompanied by memory gaps beyond what would be explained by ordinary forgetfulness. It's not classified as a disability or an illness, but as a disorder. It's not classified as a disability or an illness, but as a disorder. One that has documented cases of the disorder and has been accepted as an actual thing since the 1980s. The diagnosis of DID continues to remain controversial among mental health professionals as understanding of the illness develops, but there is no question that the symptoms are real and people do experience them. So you may be wondering what this has to do with Yandere Dev. Well, here you go!
Alright, I've got a statement to make. I can't take DID seriously. I don't think it's a real thing.
Well, it was fun while it lasted. Goodbye, everybody!
I think it's a made-up fantasy that some people indulge in as an excuse to occasionally roleplay as different people.
That's gonna be a fucking yikes for me.
I can't take it anymore. I can no longer pretend like it's not the weirdest, dumbest, cringiest thing ever.
You ever looked in the mirror and thought, huh, Christ! Ah, what is that? Ah, fuck! Christ! Fuck!
It makes me uncomfortable and creeps me out. And I don't want to see that weird carp in this anymore.
You're totally not serious. You can't be that stupid, right?
I've made the decision to remove Chris from the server. I can no longer play along with someone's weird fantasies or pretend like their silly role-playing is normal.
God, don't make me use that voice ever again! That was... ugh! Like, even if you don't believe in the disorder, what in the world made you think that a good idea to describe a disorder as a form of roleplay? You see, one of the things I've noticed about Yandere Dev over the course of me watching, like, this drama of his unfold multiple times, is that he really needs to step back and consider what he says before he says it. Because there's a better way to address this sort of thing without saying something that will get people pissed off at you. I'm not personally offended by this, but knowing how the internet has been developing in the past few years, as well as how much people are willing to make even the smallest things out to be major sins, what were you expecting? Seriously, people were willing to believe the game sleuth's bullshit because it was so easy to believe that Yandev would do something like that. He doesn't have the best track record when it comes to being honest, as he's labeled his critics as gremlins and has treated his volunteer staff terrible in the past. He's not exactly the most trustworthy guy, not because people hate him, but because he's not willing to be honest a lot of the time. Yes, I agree some of the stuff about Yandev is blown up out of proportion, and I've actually talked about how some people didn't even know what they were talking about when it comes to their criticisms about Yandere Dev in the past.
It's irrelevant. If the protagonist punches him in the face, he'll be angry, but his opinion has no effect on the rest of the game. As soon as the player moves on to the next area, that guard no longer exists. He's completely removed from the
No,
game's
that's
menu,
not true at
along
all.
with his opinion
Lots of
the
games, I
player.
can't think of them, but
If
lots of
Agent
games
47
have
punches
this.
a man in Paris,
Lots of games do this, but I won't say what ones.
And I'm going to talk about that in a little, but back to this incident. As usual, Yandev decided to post this on his debunk page, something that's constantly growing as time goes on, and really is just not much of a good idea at this point. You know, I have a hard time believing that, especially when the screenshot of what you said doesn't line up with that. You're just basically doubling back and trying to save some face, which, you know, anyone would, but it just comes off as scummy. Now, with all this said, I do need to make it clear that this is obviously bad, but since some people I think that I don't approve of the less savory reactions, Yandev should not be given death threats or suicide baits. And if you're one of those people, you're not doing yourself any favors, and frankly I consider you on a similar level to that Yandere Dev for how you're acting. Back to this, another aspect that Cirrus brought up was from another moderator who thought that they were being used like a tool, and with Yandev displaying some pretty, well, messed up thoughts in that regard. Granted, I'm generalizing and I'm sure I've got screenshots on the screen at the moment, but again, if you want the more nitty-gritty aspects of it, I do suggest reading the links I have in the description to learn more about the situation. Now, I wasn't going to talk about this part, since it's not really related to this whole debacle right here, but I figured why the hell not, especially since Yandev brought up both Persona and Danganronpa, two series that I like, as a means of defending his whole
The characters are clearly and obviously 16 through 18, but I have to say they're 18 for legal reasons.
That was truly cringeworthy.
and claims that games make it ambiguous even though, no, they aren't. I mean, in Persona, the characters are clearly in high school and we're told they're different classes, not to mention the ages are shown on the wikis that they're on. As for Danganronpa, that's clearly not true in the first game, and I won't give too many spoilers, but the characters are all 18. And in the second, again for spoilers, the characters are actually 18 to their early 20s. And in the third game, no ages are clearly given, but it's heavily implied that the characters are young adults. The next thing is that there's a difference between sexual situations and the stuff that is going on in your game, Yandev. There are massive, massive differences. The panty shot feature is a gameplay mechanic, meanwhile in Persona and Danganronpa, the fan service moments aren't actually main gameplay elements, and they aren't interactive, unlike in your game. Well, it may seem like I'm splitting hairs, let's take a moment to consider that none of the Persona games you actually get a panty shot. You get the girls in swimsuits and hot spring scenes, but the closest I can think of in Persona 5 is when the guys are looking at Ann, airing herself out and sneaking a peek at her bra. And I'm not counting DLC outfits, since those outfits you have to purchase and aren't actively pushed to get them. But that's about it. In V3, there is a love hotel where their characters are put into rather sexual situations, and the same situations do happen in Persona from time to time. However, there's no nudity, no overly sexual outfits, or extra drawn lewd imagery in them. A lot of things are implied, but it cuts to black and is up for the imagination of the player. And before you ask, yes, those scenes have also been heavily criticized. Even I have a bit of an issue with them, but then again, these situations aren't part of the main gameplay, and the player isn't even encouraged to go after them. And yes, even Persona 5 has heavily criticized for the sexualization of characters. I remember the dancing all night outfits were a big thing. Then there was Kasumi's outfit, even though I think that's stupid. And it's not just aimed at your game, Yandev. This whole thing comes off as just a pitiful defense to deflect any criticism heading your way. Now back to our actually scheduled rant. But frankly, this is how I consider to be really disrespectful to your audience, especially the audience that has been helping you and maintaining you and has been supporting you all these years. Like, you'd figure the guy would be at least somewhat grateful. Now, I stated before that I don't think people should be supporting Yandev. Not because of Yandev himself, but for how the game's development has been one of the worst game developments that I've seen in a long time. If you disagree with that, I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money. I'll shame you for it, and I don't think you're making a good, sensible decision with it, but still, it's your decision and I can respect that. I just don't think it's a good choice. And the funny thing about this, that a lot of this could have been simply avoided if Yandev were to never have made that announcement post at all, or even outright ban the moderator in question, and simply talk to them privately in DMs. Really, it's an issue that he himself made, because he knows that people will take things out of context, he knows people will take things out of his Discord server, and just blow them up. There were numerous ways to go about this, but the worst choice of every option was chosen instead, and it's something that Yandev has done multiple times. He goes with the worst option available. Now we get to talk about something that I screwed up, and this is about the copyright claims that I talked about a few months ago concerning Game Sleuth. Now I left a comment on my video about it, talking about it, but I couldn't look at myself in the mirror if I didn't address the misinformation, as it turns out that Game Sleuth was a real class act. I mean, aside from him lying about the copyright claims, basically how they were just straight up ripped from Yandev's streams and didn't have any commentary or anything to it, there was also a whole big mess of creepy stuff going on. And I'm sure a lot of people have actually talked about this, and you've probably seen videos on it, and it's not really important for me right now to talk about. But I will say that, hey, I'm in the wrong about that. But to be fair, for a lot of people, the videos were taken down, and a lot of people couldn't see if the clips in question were used for fair use or not. It's not an excuse, but it's something to take in consideration. Still, Yandev did that again in the worst way possible, but I'm culpable in that regard, and I apologize for not admitting this sooner than I could. I'm only human after all. Or am I? I'm not looking to make excuses. This was my bad. One other aspect we need to talk about is Dr. Apis and Love Letter, but there are plenty of other videos who are talking about that, and I never really brought up the whole made in 2 weeks BS when it came to the Love Letter. Maybe because I didn't buy it, and that I found that to be just completely stupid. So I don't really have much to say on that regard, and I don't have to apologize for anything on that because I never supported that crap. In any case, one last thing to people who are watching this. Anyone who was or is supporting Yandev, I do understand that this is hard to go through, and while you're saying goodbye to some people who are in the same Discord group and feel bad about this whole situation, I do hope things get better from this. I realize it's a hard pill to swallow, but sometimes these things need to be done. And if you are still supporting Yandev after all this, I do suggest that you do question yourself on that. Do you really want to support a developer who's acting like this, who's pulling these stunts and trying people who have supported him like this? Someone who's willing to make it so that way he's always in the right and never in the wrong? Just some food for thought. But that's the end of my video, and I hope you all have a good day. I'm MangaKamen, and remember to examine your fandom. Thanks for watching.
It's not that rare for you to make a mistake. Your entire existence is a mistake.